Welcome back to Football Weather. Galen Clavio, Matt Blaska joining you. It's been a little bit since we got a chance to talk with you folks, but it's great to be back. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing good. And as you know, for us in the world of academia, this is a really busy time of year. So trying to find a couple minutes or an hour or so is really challenging, as we started we started today officially, but all our big meetings were last week. So I know you're going through that this week.
Yeah, it's the start of the semester. If you're working in a college or university environment, is always something else because it all happens at once. But hey, we know it every year. We get ready for it every year. It happens every year, and then football starts, and everybody feels better about everything. So
that's the positive, right? Football is now literally this weekend, right around the corner. I think we're all excited just to watch anything that's related to football. So I'm excited. I know you're excited. We talked a little bit about it already. Yeah. So I can't wait.
It's going to be awesome, and we're really looking forward to the whole season. Looking forward, everything about this time of year, I think, gets progressively better until the weather, gets truly football-y, and then you're just kind of in this equilibrium for the rest of the year, basically. It kind of feels like there's a ramp up, and then you get to like October 28th or something like that, and then you're in a different mentality because it's just all football for the next 3 months at that stage, and then you got holidays and whatnot. So it's good times. I'm excited for it.
There's always that tweet. Someone always tweets like mid-October, late October, like this is the first day of 50 straight days of football, and so that's when you've hit. Here comes the colder weather, but really are the football weather, if you will, and here comes the holidays and the exciting part for all the big fans for both college and if you're an NFL fan as well.
That's right. We are, of course, here on the Back Home Network, brought to you by Homefield Apparel, your place to go for the finest in college fashions, the softest fabrics, the coolest designs. And Matt, I got a chance yesterday and today to take part in Homefield's first brick and mortar store as they open one on Kirkwood Avenue in the Trax building, or the Trax shop. It's right there next to Nick's and next to the Village Deli. It was awesome. Got to see Connor and Josh Johns and the whole crew. And just a great day. Couldn't be prouder of those guys at Homefield Apparel. As Connor and Christina have been pumping things out since they were on campus a decade ago, and it's just been amazing watching them just continue to build this empire and bring football fans what they want, which is great apparel. It's been awesome to see, and the store is awesome. You got to come down and check it out.
I will, yeah. I mean, at some point here in the next couple of weeks, I'll be down on Kirkwood checking out the store. I wore, my favorite hoodie from Homefield Apparel. But yeah, it's cool seeing where they were in 2016 and seeing seeing Connor talk about how they got there this morning just on social media. Such a great moment for the brand, and obviously a great moment for IU as well.
That's right. It's not just a great year for Homefield in terms of opening a new brick and mortar store, but they announced the other day something that I think most fans will be fascinated and excited by, which is the Can't Miss Kickoff Tour. And it kicks off August 29th. So they're starting up next week, and they'll be in a bunch of key cities across the country celebrating college football all season. Tallahassee on the 29th and 30th. They're in Philadelphia a couple of weeks after that. Then they're going to be in Bloomington, and we're excited to host them here. We got some cool activations we're going to be taking part in, but they're all over the place throughout the course of the college football season. They'll be back in Indiana, in Indianapolis for the Big Ten title game. And of course, they'll be along for the playoff drive as well. It's going to be really cool. And I'm excited to see them continuing to try new things and get out there and meet college football fans where they're at.
That is a dynamite travel schedule. I am jealous of the places they are going on that list. That's a great list of places to go.
Yeah. We're going to obviously keep you posted on what goes on with that, as well as all the new releases that they will have coming up soon. You can use the code HOME23 and get 15% off your first order. Again, Homefield Apparel, proud sponsors of the Back Home Network. Also, just a quick reminder, folks, if you're listening to us on Spotify, great. Keep doing so. You can also check us out on YouTube. Just search Back Home Network on YouTube. We'd love to see you there. All right. So, Matt, we had a couple things we wanted to tackle before we get to, let me say it, the games this weekend. We got games. We got college football live going on, not all of it on the North American continent, which is, fun. But let's talk a little bit first about some of the things that have gone on since we last talked with you folks. And the big news in big air quotes here, is the report from Pete Thamel from ESPN a few days ago, August 16th. I'm going to quote from the story here. The Big Ten has considered an idea of a massive expansion of the college football playoff that would grow the postseason to 24 or 28 teams. While the idea is in the very early stages, the proposal eliminates conference title games and offers a large number of auto bids for all 4 power leagues. Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti ran the idea by his conference Wednesday, sources said, and that it has being shared by others. Matt, I want to put the merits of this supposed plan aside first and foremost, because we have no idea what the actual plan looks like, because there's no details. There's no report. There was this, and then there was like NBC Sports confirmed the reporting from Pete Thamel that, yes, it's been talked about. I don't know that I've seen as collective a freak out by the establishment in a long time. And that's saying something, given how many freakouts we've seen, including freakouts about Indiana's non-conference schedule, which was also ridiculous today and this whole week. But this, we saw Ryan Russillo do a segment on this. We saw, Josh, whatever, I don't know, is it Josh Pate? Not Josh Pate, but we saw him do like half a show on it. Paul Feinbaum went nuts. Like the number of people who went crazy over what frankly seems like not even a half-baked idea, because we have no idea what's in the ingredients to begin with. Yeah. Just kind of highlights how, A, we really need the season to start, but B, how weird of a battleground college football ideas seem to be right now. Like, people are going nuts over things that really we need to not be going nuts over quite yet.
It did seem like an odd drop on a Saturday morning, right? I'm like, of all days to drop this news, they get 48 hours to think about it and let people podcast and talk about it. Let's put some of those things aside. You're right. The football, anytime something is going to change or an idea is going to happen, it causes this huge mass chaos situation. And so when you hear the word expansion of playoff or hear anything, people are going to lose their mind. I think we've gotten to a point that people are just tired of talking about the expansion and just want what it's going to look like, whether it's going to stay at 12, it's going to go to 16. What's it going to look like? Like, can we just come up with a plan? Can we agree on something? And we've been doing this for now 2 full years. And I get the sense that maybe that's where some of the frustration is coming from. Like, we have this December 1 date right around the corner. Week 0 is this week. So that's essentially 14 weeks from today, or this week, of figuring out what next year is going to look like. So you see all these talking heads saying, basically rolling the snowball down the hill, don't do this. And the Big Ten is now in a spot where maybe it's just a ploy to get to what they want, and they're their 16 team with the auto bids. That seems more likely than actually this actual plan. But it did seem that there was a collective freak out amongst, like you said, everybody that has some stake in college football.
It goes back to the old business negotiation tactic. If you want someone to pay you $1 million, ask them to pay you $2 million. And then all of a sudden, $1 million seems like a compromise. It's hard for me to even take the idea serious on its face without actual details that have been laid out and a formal plan being presented. This was like, they're talking about it. Tony Petitti hopped on a call on Wednesday and said, "What do you guys think of this?" And everybody was like, "Yeah, sounds good." That doesn't seem like it actually happened. Or if it did, it doesn't really mean in the big scheme of things. But I'm constantly shocked at this point by how insane the idea of the playoff changing makes certain people, if the idea comes from the Big Ten. And it is interesting because from an idea debate perspective, the SEC is, I believe, is almost getting too much credit for maintaining like the status quo of football, even though they have been the ones that have been also pushing playoff expansion and all of these other things. Right. They just want to do it on their terms. And it's a little bit hilarious to me that the Big Ten continues to move the needle in terms of the conversation. First with the stuff that we saw at Big Ten Media Day and what we heard there, not just about playoff format, but also about scheduling. But but now you've got this as well. The SEC has almost lost the initiative to some degree in terms of setting the agenda. And if this is really a ploy to make a 16-team playoff sound better with the auto bids, well, this is a good way of doing it, because it is reset in everybody's mind this idea of, 16 doesn't sound bad after all, if we're comparing it to having this many games and no conference championships and whatnot.
Right. And so, and I'm curious how deep into the conversation or how much T looked into the other divisions, right? So I think you might have tweeted this the other day. The FCS is 24 teams.
With 11 auto bids. Yes.
They have 11 auto bids, so it's a little bit different. D2, 32 playoff teams, 16 autos, and D3, 40 teams, 27 autos. And again, there's a lot more teams in those divisions, everyone's so worried about, if this were, let's say it does come to fruition, about how it's going to change the top and how we haven't seen that yet, right? We're still seeing the major brands win at a high level. We see that at the FCS level. North Dakota State wins every year, or South Dakota, it's the same teams. The same thing with D3. Mount Union, North Central have been the dominant team. So that part, no matter how many teams you have in college football, it's a sport that's not going to change at the top regardless. Most likely, maybe you'll have a Cinderella here and there win a game, but it's a sport where it's not like college basketball where you can win a couple games, you maybe can win one, because it's just, you're going to be worn down. You don't have that same depth. So yes, if let's say this does come to fruition, you'll have a lot more teams, and certainly it would be a really awkward change from 4 to 12 to 24 in just 4 years. But at least there is still that opportunity, and especially if and this is not going to happen, but if they give every conference a auto bid, then you're really including everybody. And that certainly would check one of those boxes probably for a lot of people. But if you're just going to have the 7th place team in the Big Ten, that's going to cause some issues. But like you said,
right,
there is this consternation of just throwing out ideas and seeing what's going to stick. And the SEC just keeps saying nothing. Or how can we counterbalance this outside of just a 9-game schedule or whatever it's going to be, right? There's too many bulls in this kitchen and no one can figure out how to get out.
Here's the thing, and we talked about this a little bit, I think, on the last show.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with the way that college football fans have now been conditioned, and more importantly, I think a lot of college football media, like national football media, and some of the regional people too, is that they're still in this mindset that, you got to win your conference championship in order to qualify to go play in the playoff. And you got to go undefeated or maybe have one loss at most. Otherwise, it just cheapens everything. And I keep getting frustrated with that mentality, because it completely ignores the reality that college football has been in for the last few years, and increasingly is even deeper into with realignment and with the number of teams that are in conferences with each other right now. And the fact that we essentially have a Power 2 that's got a combined, 38 teams or 36 teams. 34. 34. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm in broadcasting. You've got 34 teams there, and then you add the ACC. That's another
50. Now we're at 51.
Yeah, I mean it. And then you add the Big 12. You're talking about this huge consolidation of teams in a very small number of conferences. And not only does a loss or even 2 losses, in my opinion, not disqualify you because of the lack of consistency in terms of scheduling, but you have teams not even playing each other in the same league. It's impossible to say who actually deserves to go and doesn't go. The idea that only one team or maybe 2 would qualify is, to me, kind of insulting when you think about the history of college football. I mean, Matt, in 1994, we didn't have a playoff. Mm-hmm. We had, I think at the time, it was the Bowl Coalition had formed at that point.
Yep.
You know how many conferences were in college football in that season?
I would say 11 or 12, I would think. Right? Big East and...
Well, it was 10, but the thing is, the independents also comprised 12 or 13 teams.
Yeah.
And, not bad teams necessarily. I mean, not Notre Dame, East Carolina, Louisville, Memphis, Southern Miss, Army, Tulsa, Cincinnati. I mean, they were all independents. Yeah. So my point is, if you think about the way that college football, everybody asks about regional aspects of college football. And the idea that you need to have this constricted playoff format while having these expanded conferences leaves so many teams and so many areas off the table. It would be more logical if we split some of these conferences in two. You could keep the branding, but having a Big Ten East and a Big Ten West would give you more along the lines of what we're historically used to in college football. But we don't have that, and we're not going to go back to that.
Not going backwards. Yeah.
You know, so what I get so frustrated about with this, when people freak out about the Big Ten saying 24 team or 28 team playoff, that would be a lot more representative of how a playoff in the heyday of college football would have looked than what it would look like if you tried to apply these made up rules about who qualifies and who doesn't to the current environment. And I'd love to see somebody write that article or do that podcast. Instead, it's all this reactionary bullshit about how this was the worst. That was Andy Stables and Ari Wasser. This is the worst idea we've heard. It's like, guys, like, what are you defending at this point? Like, really, what are you defending?
Right. They're defending what yesteryear was, and which is like 2 years ago, I guess, in their mind, the 14 playoffs. And it's kind of what we talked about a couple of episodes ago. Last year at our first 12-team playoff, and it was great. The IU's got a chance. SMU got a chance. Boise State got it. All these schools got a chance to play in a playoff game. And did any of them win a game? No. But did a couple of them have an opportunity? Yes. Boise was a fourth down away from playing in the semifinals of the playoff last year, right? Or sorry, Arizona State was, not Boise. Arizona State was. That wouldn't have happened three years ago. That wouldn't have happened 15 years ago. So we're in a different age. Like you said, like we have no idea. Arizona State was in a 4-way tie for first place in their conference. I'm looking at my projections just from our Big Ten podcast. I had 7 teams finish 6-3 or better in the conference, and a lot of them didn't play each other. Like, so to your point, this is your fault, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12. You wanted this. You wanted these consolidation of the brands to have these big conferences. Oh, and now we're complaining because we can't figure out who the best team is in the right way that we want to, right? So that's the bigger issue is there's 16, 17, 18 team conferences. That's the issue.
Well, and I mean, the conferences are going to do what the conferences are going to do. I get frustrated with the media on this because like they keep trying to stuff toothpaste back in the tube of this, and it's not going to happen. So find a way to logically look at what's going on out there and adapt your thinking to the current environment and make logical solutions about that, or logical, suggestions about how to fix it, or acknowledge that your gold standard of a 12-0 or an 11-1 team doesn't mean nearly as much as you think it does. If the teams aren't playing each other, that you need to have play each other in order to effectively and fairly evaluate who the best team in college football is. And as much as we hear people say, we don't want that, it's like, we don't want to, like, that's kind of the whole point of everything. Like the idea that the bowl system in college football was a great thing. I think we've talked over and over again about how it just left a lot of people arguing and questioning. And that seems to be what people are addicted to with this sport, not actually like figuring things out, just arguing and complaining about things, which it's sad. Anyway.
No, you're right. Sorry. And just to your point, Auburn just claimed 2 more national championships 2 days ago, yesterday, from 94 and I think 2004. And people were mad about that. I'm like, people keep claiming national titles. USF did it a couple of years ago. It's like
Florida State's considering claiming the 2023 title. I mean,
this sport's ridiculous. That's what makes it great.
It is, exactly. But you can have some logic in order to the chaos. But you have to acknowledge that even a 12-team playoff in the current environment is probably not capturing all the teams that have a legitimate chance of winning. And as we just saw last year, you could lose a couple games in the regular season and not make your conference title game and still be the best team in a playoff bracket. And that should matter to people. And I guess what I find disingenuous about the whole thing is the argument always seems to predicate it on the idea that, you know what, the SEC teams deserve to be there. And if one of them has 3 losses but wins the title, that was totally justified, but it doesn't really work for anybody else. That line of logic really loses me. My favorite conspiracy theory about this item that was dropped over the weekend was that this was the Big Ten's way of getting the news cycle off of the Michigan news. So we should probably talk a little bit about that. I don't know if that's actually true, but we saw the story about Michigan. We knew that there were going to be, they claimed like sanctions or something announced about Michigan football in relation to Connor Stallions and the sign stealing scandal that threatened to engulf the Wolverines. Well, it didn't really engulf the Wolverines in the way that I think people perhaps initially thought that it would, but it was an interesting case study in a bunch of different things related to Michigan and how we should look at them and what happens moving forward. So basically, if you missed this story, the NCAA received a series of fines that could add up to over $30 million, but didn't have to forfeit games. They had to add one game of suspension to Sharon Moore's already existing suspension, but they essentially get to choose
2026.
Right. And they gave Connor Stallions a 10-year show cause, 8-year show cause for him, a 10-year show cause for Jim Harbaugh, which means nothing because he's never coming back to college in the first place. They put recruiting restrictions on Michigan. Ooh, can't wait to see what those do. But most people were out for blood on this because they felt, well, Michigan cheated. They got caught. There should be some kind of game punishment. We knew that wasn't going to actually happen because it never happens to teams like Michigan. It happens to other teams. Doesn't happen to teams like Michigan. But the financial penalty is pretty severe in an era where athletic departments, even athletic departments as rich as Michigan, are scrambling to come up with money to pay players in revenue sharing. What was your take on this whole story?
I'm really glad we've moved away from penalizing the kids that are currently at the university. Like I always felt like that was not fair to the current players, and especially with the coach gone and all that stuff. Most of these players, certainly now in the age of transferring, it's probably a really low number that were even there for the 2023 season. So that was great to see. Great to see. That was certainly a positive. The John Harbaugh thing or Jim Harbaugh thing did not surprise me. I think the one thing that I took from it, and this is just pulling some of this information from other folks, was that Connor Stallions, what he said on that documentary, actually played a big part in some of these, some of these into the investigation, which is wild because I watched that back and I was like, oh yeah, he did say that. Oh yeah, he did say this, and it's like, maybe you should have waited a couple of years to say all these things. And so maybe you could eventually maybe get back into college football and all these other facets. But to your point, like I think we've moved past like the old days of getting in trouble for tattoos like Ohio State did a couple of years ago. Like it's a new age of punishment. They're not going to take away wins. They're not going to do those things. It seems like they're moving to a direction of just fining schools. Like you said, $20 million, which is not a small amount. And they're already running on a budget deficit, so that's certainly going to impact them. You would think a little bit, but that was my major takeaway. Like I'm glad we're moved past like this forfeiting of games and all that nonsense.
I'm of two minds on this. I mean, I certainly think the only place you can really hurt people is in the financial penalties at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, the justification that the NCAA gave about, well, we thought about giving them a multi-year postseason ban, but that would punish the current student athletes. It's like, when the hell has that ever been a consideration?
Right.
Like you gave SMU the death penalty. You've punished teams with multi-year postseason bans in football and basketball. When like the idea that that's suddenly what you're worried about is laughable.
I agree with that. I'm just saying we're past it. But go ahead.
I guess that's the era we're in now.
Yeah.
It does highlight how little control the NCAA has over its football schools. And that's been the case for a while, but this really laid it bare. But the one thing they can do is levy financial punishments. I mean, this is where I don't know what the recruiting restrictions are, but if you think about what happens when you cheat in the NFL, and we've seen this. I mean, the Broncos got penalized. They got some heavy financial penalties in the late 90s, or I guess it was the early 2000s, because they were found to have circumvented the salary cap. The Patriots in the pick your Spygate scandal. I think it was the Cincinnati when they lost a first-round draft pick. That's kind of what I would like to see. Drop Michigan's incoming class next year to 15 instead of 25 or whatever it is. I mean, That's the only other way that you could like actually punish a team for doing things like this, or just say, hey, guess what? You don't get to add any new freshman scholarship players next year as a result of this. Like, these are the only measures that you can really take, because ultimately, as we've seen with many schools, if you punish them in terms of retroactively forfeiting games or whatever, it just doesn't happen effectively.
Yeah.
And if you try to punish teams moving forward, they sue. And that's why you don't see that happening. And so that is something I would like to potentially see if you've got clear violations. But it also just brings in to question the whole artifice of enforcement and what the rules are and how it operates. This should be cut and dry. Like the idea that, and I understand the argument, oh, everybody steals signs. This was a different type of operation, just like the Spygate operation was with the Patriots.
Same thing.
It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Adult, well-organized leagues have measures that they use to punish the teams, and you are a signatory of that. And I think what this really brings up to me, and what I think everybody should keep in mind, is if college football is going to survive, and this applies to a bunch of different areas, but it especially applies to this, there has got to be a clear-cut, these are the rules. You signed up for the rules. You follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, there are clear laid out punishments, and these are the things that happen. We've got to get away from this tendency that's especially taken place over the last 30 years or so, where schools are like, we don't feel like we broke the rules and we will not allow this to be applied to us. Like, this can't be something that's like, well, we're going to sue. No, you signed the agreement, and here are the results of the investigation, and here are the punishments. And you know, will we get to that point with college football? The only way we get there, I think, is if there is almost like a Black Sox style scandal or something. And I would have thought this might have been it. Like, this kind of struck at the fundamental heart of the competition aspects of the game. But there's going to have to be something that shakes the confidence of the public so tremendously in the product of college football that they're like, I'm not going to gamble on that because I can't trust it. Or I'm not going to watch those games because I don't trust it because it's more entertainment than sport. Are we going to get to that point? I don't know. If we're going to get there, frankly, it's going to be the conferences and the networks that force us there, not the teams and not the schools.
Right. Well, and you're right. It has to be some sort of systematic tiering, right? It just can't be ambiguous of what the actual punishment's going to be. That's what no one has any idea what the enforcement's going to be until it actually comes out. And you know, you mentioned a couple of things here that I think are really important, that over the years, we haven't seen the enforcement really add up to what actually is going to happen. It's how are we going to put guardrails as they have wanted? We want guardrails, but you guys want these guardrails and then you still break the rules. So you also need to follow your own rules that you want to put in place. And this goes to the collectives, this goes to revenue sharing, all those things that also are coming into play here now, as we are now in this new era of college football, not only on the field, but off the field. If you want everyone to play by the same set of rules, you need to set the rules and also say, you do this the first time, this is the penalty. Do the second time, you lose home games. Whatever it has to be, there has to be a structure in place for there to be continuity. And right, as like you said, I didn't even think about the trust in the public. You're right. If this happens again, and let's say it's Florida, right? And they're having this great season, and they have this scandal, and they win the whole thing. Well, we've already had this. Michigan just did it, and we basically gave them a slap on the wrist, but a $20 million fine and some scholarships. But we can't go backwards, right? We can only go forward at that point. Well, we've already seen it happen. So now, how do we get to that next level, and how can we enforce our rules better and not have it's a 2.5 years, or not 2.5 year and a half later, and we're still investigating this.
Well, and look, there were arguments, and I mean, they're disingenuous arguments because they came from, you know, a lot of SEC people. Well, the Michigan title is tainted. It's like, okay, fine. Like there was no cheating at Georgia or at Alabama when they won national titles. Those were completely clean and above board. It's like, give me a break. Michigan did get caught with this, and they deserve to be punished. But part of the issue here is ultimately you have a bunch of schools that operate above and beyond whatever the law happens to be, and you just can't run a sports league that way. You can't. I mean, it's not. It doesn't work in basketball. It doesn't work in football. The NBA has rules The NFL has rules. Major League Baseball has rules. There's rules there for a reason. You don't just get to do whatever you want. And I look at this as another step in the slow maturation of college football. I just hope they get there at some point soon. And I think the idea that we're no longer punishing schools for recruiting violations because, a kid got paid, I'm glad that's beyond us.
Yeah.
Or behind us, I guess. But now we're talking about competition aspects. We're talking about if you're going to have a cap on the amount of money, there has to be rules about that. And you've got to be a signatory to it or you don't get to participate. And I think that ultimately ends up being the route that we either get there or we don't get there. Anyway, go ahead, finish up.
No, I'll just say, I think we talked about this off the air a couple of weeks ago, is like at the end of this year, you're going to be able to look at, you would think, tax returns or something to see what Duke spent or what certain schools spent. Everyone should have to report exactly how their revenue shared this past fiscal year. So there's no ambiguity, I can't say that word right now.
Ambiguity. You had it there.
Ambiguity. But you also have to have the Northwestern say, we're going to do it too. And the Dukes, all these schools that are private, because that's the only way that you can keep it somewhat above board. So everyone's playing by the same rules. And there's not, if we're having essentially a salary cap, everyone has to report how they're paying folks.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, to say the least. Let's dive into the weekend. Let's finish on a happy note here as we have games coming up. We're recording this on Tuesday in, what is that? Well, it's less than 5 days at this point. Let's just put it that way. So we'll call up the handy dandy ESPN slate of games. And of course, we start off with Farmageddon as Iowa State and Kansas State take on each other at Aviva Stadium in Dublin, Ireland. Classic setting for a team from Iowa and a team from Kansas facing off. K-State, a 3-point favorite in this one, and that's because they are ranked slightly ahead of Iowa State in the polls. Kansas State 17th, Iowa State 22nd. This is the one everybody's looking forward to this weekend. This is the official kickoff of college football, as official as one gets, given that it's week 0. But the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. You excited for this one, Matt?
I am. I mean, it's the first game of the year. I think last year we had Florida State, Georgia Tech, so I was excited for that one when it got kicked off. And if you remember at that point, Florida State was ranked in the top 5 or 10, right?
Yep.
And who knew that was going to be the absolute watershed moment for their entire season, just going right down the tube, was when Georgia Tech ran on the field and scored that field goal late. So I'm excited. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of either team, but I do have Kansas State playing in the Big 12 championship, so I have some rooting interest in this one. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Farmageddon in a different farmland in Dublin. I have been to the stadium; it is beautiful, so I will highly recommend. If you're heading over, you're going to enjoy your time.
Yeah, we got a couple of friends that went over for that, and hopefully that they're having a good time with it. It's an interesting matchup, as you mentioned. These two teams are contenders this year. Kansas State is, I think, they're the second highest ranked team, I think, or maybe the third. I would, depending on where BYU is in the mix. But K-State last year 9-4 overall, 5-4 in conference. Iowa State, of course, 11-3 and 7-2, and lost in the Big 12 title game to Arizona State. It's going to be an interesting game, and I think ultimately it has all the earmarks of a game that should be competitive, should be a pretty good competition overall. And I hope that it is, because there's not a whole lot else that day that looks like it's going to be particularly competitive. So you've got at least something mildly intriguing in that second game of the day, a 4:00 kick, which I don't even know is on television. I'm not seeing a television network listed for it.
I don't see it either. How does that happen? There's only 5 games. No one wanted that game.
Maybe somebody has it. We'll look into it. But Idaho State, who is not an FBS school, I'll note, taking on UNLV, who has a brand new coach, although a name that we know from the past in college football.
The Florida head coach, right? It's hard to believe. I mean, he went out there. I think you could tell he had drawing a blank on his name right now. I can't.
Dan Mullen,
yeah. It's just, you could tell when he was in studio last year that he really wanted to coach. So not surprising he took a job when the job opened up. UNLV was really good last year. They played Boise in the Big the Mountain West Championship. So Not that they're returning a lot of guys, but certainly it's a job where you can win at now. After a while, it was not.
Yeah.
So
Barry Odom did a nice job out there. He's at Purdue now.
Yep.
That's if your reward for doing well at UNLV is the Purdue job, maybe consider don't do as well at UNLV.
Yeah.
So anyway, the interesting thing about this game is that this was originally supposed to be played September 13th, and they had to move the game to August 23rd because Las Vegas is hosting the Canelo Alvarez-Terrence Crawford fight. So,
they had to fit it somewhere.
You got to fit it somewhere, so they got a waiver, and I think that is the reason why it's not on television at this point. So
hopefully they find a network for it. I'll watch it if it's on.
So it's going to be interesting. Anyway, the next game, Fresno State and Kansas on Fox. This is a little closer in terms of the spread than I thought it would be. Kansas a 13-point favorite. I mean, they should win this relatively easily. They're a cut above Fresno State, but it's an important game for Kansas. They had a great year, a couple of years ago, and then last year they go 5-7. Lance Leopold had just signed a contract extension. There's just a bunch of crazy stuff going on over there. They just did this huge renovation. And I think as we've seen, like you've got to do that if you're the Kansases, the Indianas, like the teams that have not been successful historically. But it just feels like Kansas needs to have a bounce back year this year, and they've got to get started on a good note with this game.
Yeah, I've seen them being predicted to be one of those sneaky teams all year. They were 5-7, but they lost a lot of one-score games. So they were in a lot of games last year, just happened to not win those one-score games. So for them to get off on the right foot, I don't think they'll be a Big 12 contender, but maybe if they can win some of those close ones this year, they can flip it and get to maybe a 9-3, 8-4, maybe be in the mix late in the season. But yeah, for them starting off with Fresno State coming to them, and like you said, the renovation. So this is their first game home, I think, since they were at Arrowhead a lot of games last year. So I think this is their first real home game in 2 years.
7:00 kick, Sam Houston and Western Kentucky. That's a Conference USA conference game, which is a nice way to get things started in that conference. I'm half tempted to drive down for that game. It's only $14 tickets, and Bowling Green's not that far away from Bloomington. I'll probably pass on that. But Western Kentucky a 10-point favorite in that one, and then an evening game, not a night game. Stanford at Hawaii, and Hawaii a favorite, which just kind of indicates how bad Stanford's season might go this year.
Yeah, I don't know why this game's out later, but to kind of stagger this a little bit, but whatever. Kind of what you mentioned earlier, Hawaii's building a new stadium, so that's good for them, good for their economy, as they've had that stadium there for a while. It's gonna be a long time, I think, to build it. They said 2029 that will be done, but yeah, Stanford's in they fired their coach in April, so they're really going to be fighting uphill all year. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the FBS, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be Stanford's in real trouble, and Cal is not in much better shape, and you do feel for those fan bases, but it's tough on the streets out there, I guess, is the best thing that I could say about the situation with all of those programs, and I'm curious Andrew Luck is in there to try to salvage Stanford football and Stanford athletics in general. It's going to take all of his powers to actually be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, they're dealing with the same issues as not Notre Dame as much, but certainly the schools that Northwesterns and stuff, that it's just hard to get into those schools. So it's really difficult to take transfers in, and so the transfer portals does not help them at all, and building continuity is going to be really difficult in the long run for schools like that. So unfortunately, Stanford's in that run, but hopefully maybe Andrew Luck can get it going again. People forget Stanford was pretty good for a 5-year stretch when Jim Harbaugh was there. They were beating USC, they were beating Oregon, then playing a couple of Rose Bowls, but that's almost 10 years ago now. So It's been a while.
A lot to look forward to this weekend as we get college football started once again. We'll be back next week with a full preview of the week 1 slate, as we'll have a lot more football to talk about then. And we'll also chat about whatever new developments happen within the game of college football. There's always something, and gives us a non-exhaustible reservoir of things to chat about. Anyway, Matt, good to see you, my friend. Best of luck with welcome week, or the first week, I guess, in your case. And we'll look forward to chatting with you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks to everybody for joining us on Football Weather. For Matt Blaska, I'm Galen Clavio. We'll catch you folks on the flip side. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the football. So long, everybody.